K98 Talk is expanding its lineup for 2015. This means we are expanding our advertising base. Whether you're a startup trying to push through to the next level or an established business trying to supplement your advertising budget, web-based advertising is a solid investment. Thanks to Talk's newest partnership with TuneIn Radio and instant access to our sister station, K98 FM, we give you worldwide access at a reasonable cost. Interested parties should email us at sales@k98fm.com.
Wondering why you're up early with us on a Sunday morning making a cocktail? News lately got you drinking? Hungover from the mainstream media by Sunday? We are, and we got you covered.
We sure do. We got your hangover cure for those weekly news blues. So sit back, top off your mimosa, and add some Baileys to that coffee.
Take a match to your copy of the New York Times. Light, funny, and oh yeah, news with booze.
And a lot of laughter.
Welcome to Bloody Marys and Broadsheets. And a very good, easy Sunday morning, May 3rd, 2015, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And even though we are broadcasting live at the hotel from right online, Stacey and I never, ever, 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 ever let down our audience, do we, baby?
We try really hard not to.
Good morning. It's Bloody Marys and Broadsheets here on We Are America Radio on the Live 365 platform. As you can tell, I have super morning voice. The eyes are still not open. But today we have been promising you something for a while that we felt we had to deliver. And you're going to spend the majority of the hour with us today and Mr. Ron Fournier. That's right, the National Journal and Fox News. But right now, Stacey and I, broadcasting live from right online. What did you tell the folks a little bit about the last couple of days here?
Well, some great presentations. We did get to see Mark Rubio speak. Still think he is probably the best orator of the group after time number 3, and he still does have that smile.
But what else? Wait. Okay, so yeah, you think he's the best orator, and he's got a great smile. But what else did you lean over and say to me?
Wow, he's really short.
That's right. That Marco Rubio be standing on that phone book, baby. It's one of those, television things. I saw him come in the room. I'm like, oh, yes, I'll have the salmon. And I'm like, oh, my God, that's Marco Rubio.
No, but another great speech. When we got to the main auditorium for opening ceremonies, a great talk by Cheryl Atkinson. Really enjoyed that.
That was great.
I got to see Liz Mayer speak. Jazz Shaw won Blogger of the Year. Congratulations, Mr. Shaw.
Congratulations, that Jazz Shaw over there, that hot air, baby.
Yep, and just a really good time connecting with folks we see online. Learned a lot. So really excited about what we do when we get back.
And then, folks, not only do we have Ron Fournier for you right now for this Sunday, but coming up Tuesday, 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Game On, Stacey and I are going to be bringing you Mr. Dan Gaynor from the Media Research Center. Next Sunday, Mother's Day, we are bringing you Mr. John LaRosa of 4-Tier Strategies, because Stacey and I strategized and we said, what better Mother's Day gift to give to our audience than a live broadcast with a guy who runs a political consulting firm, because that just is motherly love to me all over the place. And now the other thing is, one of the reasons we go to these conferences is, look, we brought you Charles Cook. We brought you Jay Cost. We're bringing you Ron Fournier. We brought you Selena Zito. This one is about 98.9976425 locked up. So I don't really want to get ahead of myself, but for everybody in the audience right now, it seems like most likely in the next 2 weeks, we may have a guest whose name rhymes with Udith Miller.
Wow, that was subtle.
All right, folks, so listen.
Subtle.
So the whole world is burning. Yes, we know Baltimore is on fire. Yes, the Middle East is on fire. We saw that there were charges coming down in the case out of, what was that, the Freddie Gray case. But we really have honestly been off the radar since Thursday down here at Right Online. So we happen to miss all the...
Oh, Durka.
Who basically just want to take the world in. So that they can go see who, Scotzo?
Virgin.
That's right. But at Right Online, we had absolutely no.
Stay out the bushes.
And Chris Rock still said it best on Baltimore.
Grand opening, grand closing.
Well, that was probably the
And
worst
right
week.
now, just like every Sunday, it is time to bring to you our weekend update from Mr. Eric Williams at thebarbedwiresatire.com. That's right. Your weekend news update encapsulated for a week's worth of news in about 30 seconds. Baltimore Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake found herself in hot water when she said that those causing trouble this week needed to be allowed to have the space to destroy. When called on the outrageous statement, Ms. Blake clarified her remark by saying, "Look, young people in Baltimore should have the space today to destroy here, just like liberals should have the space to destroy the rest of the country."
Due to the riots in Baltimore, a baseball game between the Orioles and the White Sox was played with no fans in attendance. Games played under these odd conditions have another name, too. It's called spring training.
Former President Bill Clinton's plane made an emergency landing in Africa on Wednesday. Rumors for the landing range from engine trouble to a booty call. But after loading up bags of cash from the president of Tanzania to go to their foundation, Mr. Clinton said he was on his way to the next donor.
MSNBC's Alex Wagner was very troubled this week over our, in her words, half-white president and many others calling the Baltimore looters thugs. After a lengthy panel discussion, the group finally decided on a term they all felt comfortable with: misguided Democrats.
On Friday, Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby brought criminal charges against the 6 police officers involved in detaining and transporting Freddie Gray the night of his arrest. There are still many, many unanswered questions about the case, but Mrs. Mosby was able to go ahead and file the charges now under the state's rush to judgment statute.
And Ben Affleck tried to keep the secret that the fact that his ancestors were slave owners, and he asked the director of a PBS special on the actor's roots to omit the facts from the program before it aired. So in a nod to his ancestors, in his next movie, Batman will also own one slave, an older gentleman named Alfred.
And that's your weekend news update for the week ending May 3rd, 2015. Am I an ass if I bring up the fact that you were talking about Ben Affleck trying to hide the fact that he had slave-owning ancestors and threw the word roots in there?
I didn't throw anything in anywhere. Blame Eric. No, I'm just kidding.
Eric Williams, the barbedwiresatire.com, bringing you that weekend update. All right, so now without any further ado and any further fanfare, for the majority of the rest of the hour, we're going to give you Stacey and I interview with Ron Fournier of National Journal and the Fox News panel. Ron also was head of AP, I think, back in 2005. You're going to hear his bio coming up. And really, honestly, one of the reasons it's important for us to bring you this interview is that you need to listen to honest journalists. You don't have to agree with them all the time. And just from a personal point of view, the man was so gracious, and it was such a personable interview that you'll hear about 3 minutes in, there's a quick hitch, and he actually calls us back in on a landline. I had cut and edited it. The interview is great. Ladies and gentlemen, we bring you Mr. Ron Fournier. We are very pleased to stay on the absolute roll that we've been able to tap for our audience of bringing you the best guest that we could ever bring. Stacey, this is one we've been excited about for a while, right?
It is, and I'm so happy to welcome him to the show. JD, why don't you go ahead and do the intro?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Moisey, we're bringing you that Mr. Ron Fournier. Ron is a senior political columnist and editorial director of the National Journal. He worked at the Associated Press for 20 years, most recently as their bureau chief. His career began in Arkansas, first with the Hot Springs Sentinel-Record. He covered the state legislature and Bill Clinton. In 93, Mr. Fournier had to move to Washington, unfortunately. In 2005, he served as a fellow at the Harvard Institute of Politics, where he co-wrote Applebee's America. That's right. Take the Visa card out, go to Amazon, and buy it right now because it was a New York Times bestseller. He's won numerous awards, including the Society of Professional Journalists Sigma Delta Chi Award for coverage. And he has a book. Ron, is the book out yet based on that fantastic piece you had, How Two Presidents Helped Me Deal with Love, Guilt, and Fatherhood? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Ron Fournier.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. It could be great. Really terrific.
Excellent. Now I know a while back, Ron. Let's start out a little bit. One of, I think, the best pieces that I had ever. One of the best pieces I ever read was "How Two Presidents Helped Me Deal with Love, Guilt, and Fatherhood." Now, have you said that may be coming out in book form? Is that something you have coming up?
Yeah, thanks for saying that. It's certainly this thing I'm the proudest of. It was the hardest thing I ever wrote. It was a first-person story on my son who was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a high-functioning form of autism, in 2010, just as I was thinking about leaving the I said, hey, you've had this job that is taking you away from the family and from Tyler. You're going to use it now to help with him and to get him out in the world a little bit more. So you have to learn how to use these social clues that he wasn't, or skills that he wasn't born with. So toured a bunch of presidential libraries and a bunch of presidential with him and had a great time and learned a lot about his condition and each other and how my expectations for him were outsized and wrong-sized, and how I had to learn to appreciate him for who he was and not what I thought he should be. And I thought I was all done after about a year, and Lori said, no, now you got to go see if Bill Clinton and George Bush and Barack Obama will meet him. And I said, well, they're not going to do that. They're busy men, and I wrote them all pretty nastily. I'm not the easiest guy to have covering you. But they were very gracious, as public servants are, and they know that part of their job is giving back. And with no, especially for Clinton and Bush, who are out of office, they had nothing to gain by it. They each spent an hour separately with Tyler, and it was remarkable watching him come out of his shell, especially with, believe it or not, with George Bush. So I've turned into a broader book on the expectations all of us parents have for all of our kids, whether they're typical or special needs, where those expectations come from, internally and externally, and how, if we're not careful, they can really misshape our kids. And the book is done. Crown Book is working it. We're in post-production now, and it'll be ready for next Father's Day, graduation day. It is called, the tentative title pulls from a quote from George Bush, where he looked at me when he first met Tyler, and he said, "Love that boy." And that's the tentative title of the book, Love That Boy.
I have goosebumps just thinking about it, folks. Just be sure you read the book. The piece is absolutely phenomenal. And I'm glad that we opened up and segued with this, because one of the reasons we've been very excited to have Ron as a guest is that one of the things that he's been pounding his fists on the table about for a long time is jersey-wearing politics. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, basically everybody lining up, I'm red, I'm blue.
Right.
Our audience tends to be pretty conservative, grassroots, Tea Party, Republican, however you want to look at it. But I also find you to be one of the most fair journalists out there. So I'm recommending to everybody that you read in the conservative spectrum or the mainstream spectrum, add Ron into your daily read, because even if you don't agree at times with what he's saying, he backs up his point. And I think yesterday, and he writes so much, he has a piece out today. No,
Can you?
Hey, Ron.
Sorry about that.
All right, folks, we are bringing back Ron Fournier. You want to know why? Because he is so important at National Journal and Fox News, is that he was on the run and he was given his time, but he was gracious enough to go into the National Journal's secret bunker. They have this NSA-type communication stuff up, and we have a clear signal. Ron, is the NSA listening, or are you back with us?
Well, I am calling from the Watergate.
Are you really?
I work in the Watergate. I'm overlooking the hotel. I'm overlooking two things, actually. I'm looking directly into the section of the Watergate that Monica Lewinsky lived in.
Oh, good.
And right on the other side of that building is where the break-in was. So I think this is fitting.
Oh, my. As a completely unrelated aside, are you going to be at Right Online by any chance this weekend?
I don't think so.
Okay, because we were looking for you at CPAC. We were actually, where the media section was set up behind the main room?
Yeah, I was there.
I know. There was a laptop there with a folder of yours at the end of a table that said Ron Fournier. And before Stacey and I had to go out and broadcast on Radio Row, I'm like, we got to grab him.
So you're the one who put those pictures in that my wife was asking about.
Well, listen.
Yeah, sneaky dog. Yeah.
I will neither confirm nor deny. But one of the reasons we wanted to bring him back in the secure NSA...
Just for your audience's record, there were pictures of naked liberals.
Yeah, well, of course they were. We all know listen, everybody thinks the conservative are Amish. They're not. You've been to CPAC after hours, but, that's what everybody...
I have it, actually, and I can confirm that conservatives know how to party.
Oh, good. Oh, Stacey, did we mention the congressman's name? Or listen,
No.
Okay, there was a congressman, a hot tub, but there was just wild stuff. Okay, so one of the most important reasons that we wanted to bring Ron Fournier to you all is his style more importantly than anything else. And he's kind of like Stacey. He cannot stop writing pieces. So when I had done my prep and went to bed last night, I thought I was done with this perfect piece that he wrote, and I woke up today and he had something else. But we'll get to that later. I think right here, and I want to start the way that he had, I want to give you the intro to the piece that he had written yesterday. And this is basically on the city of Baltimore burning to the ground. But this isn't a journalist saying this, and this isn't a politico saying this. When you read this, it makes you realize that we all used to be Americans. On one of the last nights of his life, in a room lit by the garish glow of hospital monitors, my father and I spoke as we had for so many years, about sport, about heroes, about the meaning of it all. We started with Gordie Howe, the Detroit Red Wings legend whose career connected our childhoods, and ended with Willie Horton, the Tigers left fielder who helped heal our city in 1967. Quote, he told him to stop, unquote, whispered my father, a retired Detroit riot cop. He told them to stop burning. Horton was a Detroit-born slugger whose team had just split a doubleheader with the Yankees on July 23, 1967, when a police raid of an unlicensed after-hours bar sparked rioting that would lead to 43 deaths, 1,189 injured, and more than 2,000 buildings destroyed. Tigers executives told Horton and his teammates to go home, according to the Sporting News story. Stay safe. Instead, Horton drove to 12th Street. He stood atop a car. He pleaded for peace. He saw the flames, the broken bottles and buildings. With tears in his eyes, the man who grew up in the nearby Jeffrey Products asked angry looters to not lose their purpose, to not destroy what little community and infrastructure they had. Ron, please tell our audience why and how it's so important to you as a journalist that when you're presenting something as objective as literally a city burning, how and why you paint such a visceral picture to it.
Well, it's nice of you to read that and to say that. Just so you know, I'm sure you can tell because you're looking at your computer screen, but the readers can't tell that last two paragraphs, starting with Willie Horton climbing on the car, I was literally quoting from the Sporting News. It's a remarkable story they did. The why is pretty easy. It's my job. There's too many journalists who've really taken the fun out of our job and the purpose out of our job, and come to work every day knowing what their opinion is, knowing what side they're going to take. Their mind is closed off, and they're wearing their blue jersey or their red jersey, and they're writing for people in their blue jerseys and red jerseys. And I'd rather be, as much as I can, more open-minded, at least empathetic, try to see things from as many different vantage points as I can. I was raised by people in a place in this country where everything in life is known not to be black and white, but it's very complicated and gray. And even the politics in Macomb County, Michigan, where I was actually raised just inside of Detroit, not too far from Macomb County. The politics are purple, not black and white. That's the home of the original Reagan Democrats. So the man I wrote about there is one of the original Reagan Democrats. My dad came on the police force in Detroit in 1961. In his home was a picture of Roosevelt and Kennedy and the Pope. By the time he left the force in 1985, he was the strongest Republican, Rush Limbaugh-loving, Richard Nixon-adoring conservative you could ever find. He changed like a lot of the country. So anyhow, I get to work like I usually do around 6:30 yesterday, and I'd seen this video of this remarkable woman in Baltimore who rushed out into the streets, putting her life at risk, started beating the heck out of her son, who was wearing a hoodie and was throwing rocks at police officers, and dragged him home. And it had an effect on me. I don't know if I would actually hit, if I condone hitting your kids, although I probably would have done the same thing. But it struck me as, here's a woman who, is an example of what we need more of in this country. The most powerful social force in this country is a present and loving parent. I was blessed with two of them. And here she's doing something that brave, and it got me thinking about Willie Horton, who I could remember the story. I had to look it up, but I could remember the story of him doing what Sporting News talked about, and that then led to me thinking about my father, and that it was 2 nights before he passed away. It's just been just over a year, and he was in and out of consciousness, and we talked about what fathers and sons talk about, sports. And when he was talking about Willie Horton, here's a man who, like I said, his worldview had changed, and the way he looked at riders and the way he looked at people of a different color wasn't as politically correct as a lot of people might expect.
It was a different
world. With Willie Horton, here's a guy who had the you-know-what. Now, my dad, I'll say guts. My dad would have said something else. Who went out and tried to save his city. And my dad was not impressed by Willie Horton because of how far he hit a ball, or because of the great speeches he gave, or because what color jersey he wore. I don't think we know what Willie Horton's party was, and my dad didn't care. My dad cared about the kind of man he was. And I saw in that woman the kind of woman I would like, I would like to be the kind of person that mother was. So I try to connect those three very disparate things. I don't know if I pulled it off, but I'm relatively new at the column writing business, and I find that it's easier to go to a place that is personal to me if I'm going to try to make a connection with somebody personally.
Not only did you pull it off before Stacey jumps in here, but not only did you pull it off, but I took away the same thing. The funny thing about that is, yes, it's important parenting, but when I watched that video, yes, she's the poster child for good. She's the poster child of American citizenry, in my opinion.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
The people who are nitpicking her because she was hitting her kid, get over it. The lesson you want to take from this is a woman at a time when we're all shrugging our shoulders and are apathetic about how all of our institutions and all of our leaders are letting us down. Here's a woman who decided to shake her fist. Now, in this case, she shook it in the face of her son, but we should be shaking it in the face of our mayors. We should be shaking it in the face of our bosses and our business leaders, our charity leaders, our church leaders, every form of leadership that is letting us down right now. We need to realize that this is a country of the people, and we're responsible for taking it back. And in our own small way, she was taking back a piece of this country, the most valuable thing to our country, which is our future, by protecting her kid. And Willie Horton was doing the same thing in 1967.
Amen, Reverend Fournier. Mercy, preach it.
Well, and we certainly
you get me going.
We certainly saw any number of Baltimore residents, a full line of residents standing between the cops and protesters. We saw individuals, a great veteran out there talking about, how disturbed he was about what he was seeing. And I think we're really losing the perspective of a lot of those citizens. And as a mom, she was kind to her son. My son would have been hurting a lot worse. So
now where it's harder is we can all connect with her because we're all parents and we're all against rioting. Where it's harder, okay, now can we take that same empathy, or at least open-minded, the next time we hear somebody standing in front of a podium or standing in the street and calling for example, more tax money, to put more money in the schools to educate these kids so they're not in the position where they're hopeless when they're 16 years old. We might disagree with that as a policy, but can we be as open-minded and at least try to understand where they're coming from as we were, if we're going to forgive her for hitting her kid, can we forgive somebody for trying to solve a problem that we agree with a policy that we disagree with, and at least have some mutual respect? That's where I would like to see us getting back to. We seem to have lost that ability.
Disagree without becoming disagreeable.
Exactly, and to be constantly open to being persuaded and dissuaded. Right now, we're all, and I'm like this. You read my stuff. I have, especially on Twitter, I have a hard time, reminding myself that I've got to keep an open mind and be empathetic and be civil in disagreeing with people.
I do. Sometimes I check my tweets 3 times before I send them to you, and I'm like, nope, calm down, go outside, take a walk.
Right.
That's kind of you. Maybe you should take 5 seconds and a little longer walk. No, I'm teasing. Take a long walk off a short bridge. No.
Wait. No jersey wearing on the show, Ron. Come on. But in all seriousness, first of all, we did talk initially about a book you're writing specifically about the experience with your son and the expectations of parenting. As the aunt of a child with autism, I just want to thank you for speaking so frankly and openly about that. It's something that people who don't have a child who are impacted that way really don't understand, and I know the parents of kids who are impacted by an autism spectrum disorder really, really appreciate it. So
Well, God bless you. You should thank my son, though, who's got, you talking about the other word for guts. Here's a kid who every step along the way has had the ability to say, I'd rather not you make me a public figure, in effect. And up until the moment the book gets published, he can yank the cord on it. But he's really embraced his Asperger's, and it's who he is, and he wants to be a part of educating people to, there's a lot more of this in all of us than we realize. I think we're all somewhere on the spectrum, and there's a lot more people who are clinically autistic than who are being diagnosed, and there's so many kids who are being diagnosed who can't get the support that my son is getting because we have the means, and that's what really breaks my heart.
Yeah, no, my sister actually worked with ABA therapy for autistic children when she was younger, and to get those kids the services they needed at the right age when they were quite young was very, very difficult through the public school system. But their mainstream rate was over 75%. So, to not see those kids get those services is absolutely heartbreaking.
Well, it's one thing we do in the book is trace our path to getting him the services. First, why we were so late to diagnose him, which was all on us, mostly on us. But how our expectations for him blinded us to what he was really going on to. And then once we finally woke up and got him diagnosed, how the training we got and the coaching we got from some remarkable educators and clinicians on how to get him the services from the public school. And there's as you know, there's some things you need to know going in to advocate for yourself, and we're using this book hopefully to help some people do that.
And Ron, tell the audience the full name of the book again.
The tentative title is "Love That Boy," which is a direct quote from President Bush. President Bush and Clinton played big parts in this book, and President Bush in particular met Tyler my last day on the White House beat when Tyler was only 5 years old. And Tyler was acting up as any 5-year-old would, but even more so being autistic. And I was embarrassed. And I have to admit it, not for Tyler. I was embarrassed for myself and really self-conscious. And Bush, you can say what you want about his politics, but there's no more gracious man. And very intuitive. He really reads a room real well. Bill Clinton reads a country brilliantly. Historically. Bush reads a room masterfully. And on our way out, Bush could tell I was uneasy, and he grabbed me by the elbow and he looked me in the eyes, and it was like a presidential directive. He said, "Love that boy." And at the time, I thought he meant love that boy despite of his idiosyncrasies. And through the book, you'll see it takes me a long time to realize what he was saying was love him because he's different. And the one message I want to come out with the book is, all our kids are brilliant. That's what makes them are different. That's what makes them great. Don't get hung up on the fact that your kid might be not as smart, not as big, not as skinny, not as something as you thought he or she should be.
And this is why that, to my mind, for a show that focuses so much on politics, news, and government, that Ron is an important guest to have. Because everybody out there who reads something and they say, I don't agree with that, and they start screaming or they fire off a tweet or now he's a bad guy and he goes on the Nixon's enemies list or however you want to look at it, it goes back to when I did the quote from the piece that you had from yesterday. It's important that whether it's our politicians or even people in media, to the point that those people will allow themselves to be, I think that people who have politics and government and news as a passion have to allow themselves to humanize those people as well.
Yeah, and it's such a good point. It's getting harder because they're getting more protective and isolated. But it's why you see me struggling with my coverage of Hillary Clinton, frankly. I've been very critical of the way she mishandled the email and the foundation stuff. But it's because I know them both as people. I lived in the same small town. To this day, when I see Hillary Clinton, she asks about my kids by name. My kids used to hang around the state capitol. We used to bump into them at ballparks. Little Rock's a small town, and there was only a few reporters in town. So they never were friends, and I would never pull a punch on them. I mean, you see how I've written them over the years. I've been very, I hope, fair, but certainly tough. But I try, even when if you look at what I wrote today, I called her a congenital rule breaker, borrowing from William Safire, who called her a congenital liar. It's a real tough column, but I say at the top, this is difficult to do for someone like me who admires the Clintons. Now, I get a lot of criticism because I have the audacity to say I admire them, but look, they've been in public service for a long time. I know they really care about their country. I know they raised a girl who they loved very much and did as good as they possibly can with. I don't think they're evil people or who are going to destroy this country. But whether or not I agree with them politically, or whether or not I think what they're doing tactically and strategically is correct, I try to remember I'm not covering a title. I'm not covering a Secretary of State. I'm not covering the former governor of New Hampshire or trying to think of Romney, of Massachusetts. I'm covering a person. And, Mitt Romney was a person that we never really saw very well in 2008. The Clintons are people who are more caricatures now to the media than people. And I try to break through that whenever I can. It's hard, though.
Well, it was actually very interesting to me, one of the quotes you pulled out. We interviewed Jay Cost this past week.
And he's great.
We had a blast.
Fun.
His new book, A Republic No More, he goes back and does this big Tammany Hall quote about the difference between honest graft and dishonest graft, but Jay very clearly labels them both as corrupt in his mind because they have the ability to be against the public good. One of the quotes you used today was more than 180 Clinton Foundation donors lobbied her State Department. That's not illegal, writes Vox reporter Jonathan Allen, but it is scandalous. When you take a look at this whole thing, does it really matter in terms of the Clinton persona, if you will, whether what they did was strictly illegal or legal, or does it matter more that it could give the perception?
It's a great question. I think it obviously matters. There's a difference between something that's a bribe, for example, that would get you thrown in jail, and a conflict of interest that gives people the heebie-jeebies. But even the latter is pernicious and is inexcusable as a leader, because what it does, even creating the conflict of interest, even if you literally didn't say, give me this and I'll give you that. If you're mucking things up the way they have, it undermines our trust in our leadership. And if you look at the polling numbers, we're on a tipping point in this country, because if we don't trust the people who head our institutions, and we don't trust our institutions, that's the fabric that holds us together. So like I wrote today, you know what? How does this matter? Well, the problem is too many people are asking that question through the political lens. What they're saying is, can she still get elected despite all this? Well, yeah. Democrats, she could still get elected. People who really love Hillary Clinton, her family, yeah, she could still get elected despite this, because guess what? The Republicans might put up a candidate who is even more untrustworthy. But why would you want to run for this office? Why would you want to be president by default? Or as Joe Klein, I see, has just filed a story where he calls it president of the lesser of two evils.
Right.
Why would you want to be? Why would you want to be? So I wish I'd use that line. Why would you want to be standing with this title and this new job, having gotten it by demonizing the other side, polarizing the country further, disuniting us more, and creating a level of distrust in yourself as a person and as a leader that right now, washes into the Democratic Party. There's huge portions of the country right now who doubt her integrity. You can't lead if people don't trust you.
Well,
so the problem is they're all running their campaigns as if the only thing that matters is winning. And when that's your finite goal, you start doing things that make it impossible for you to govern. And what they need to get back to is, yeah, I want to be president, but I want to be an effective president. So how do I run a campaign where I can really change this country when I get in?
Well, it's like it's like being the tallest Smurf, right? I mean, if that's the objective.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you're still living.
Or the most handsome Fournier boy. That's not a very good thing. Yeah.
But
now, to his credit, I think Obama did this in 2008. I think as a candidate, he did try to conduct himself in a way that would make him an effective leader. The problem was he did not translate it when he got to Washington. He abandoned his message. But he is someone who ran a very clean, affirmational a campaign. It just didn't transfer into his presidency.
But it was. I mean, would you say that it was? And look, and this was partly the fault of the Republican Party and the way that they ran in 2008. It was partly, to my mind, the function that the world seemed to be literally falling apart at the seams. It was like you said, aspirational, but it was very broad and vague. Like I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So,
no, but
no, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I don't think you have to give an example because nobody would disagree with it. It was very, very vague and thematic. But you know what? That's how people make their choices. You don't when you decide on a car. I don't know about you, but I might look at the Consumer Report, but that's about as deep as I go. I certainly don't run down the list of every part and run down and see who the subcontractors are and how the carburetor is made. And I don't get very deep. I'm more interested in how I feel in the car. Where's the cup holder? How does it make me look? How do other people look at me when I drive this car?
But I like to have a beer with this car.
Exactly. That's, and at a time in 2008, we really were desperate for a change. The previous president, most Americans thought had failed, and they wanted something completely different. And Barack Obama promised them something different. His problem is he was not able or willing to deliver. Now here we are in 2016, and guess what? We're even hungrier for change. Exponentially are hungrier for change. And if the Republican Party would get out of its own way, the Republican Party could really take advantage of it because Hillary Clinton's sure making it easy.
You don't have.
She could not look more yesterday.
You don't listen. You don't have to convince Stacey and I. I mean, we walked out of CPAC, and we've been saying it longer than everybody else. And the tagline for one of our shows, and we even called Charles. We had Charles Cook on the Charles C.W. Cook on the show. And we called him out on it jokingly.
He hates me.
Heck of a lot bigger profile than we are. But when we started our first radio show, our tagline was "Liberservative Conservatarian," because I think that both parties have lost the ability to offer you a blue plate special. And I came out of CPAC looking at the establishment and the party structure almost as the GOP is so separate from the grassroots and the primary voters and the candidates who are running, and the party, it seems to almost trying to be euthanizing itself because it wants the energy of the grassroots, and you'll see the Harvard study that says maybe some of the millennials are moving, but it also just wants the big corporate money. Shut up. Jeb is what we want because he's Chamber of Commerce, and all you crazy people worry about Rand Paul and Scott Walker and Ted Cruz, and let's just put Jeb in office and not worry about this.
I think we're heading for a big populist revolt in this country for every reason you said times two, because it's not just happening in your party. If we were able to start right now and have a whiteboard like they do in businesses, in businesses they're constantly saying, let's pretend that we were starting the company today. I know it's a 100-year-old company, but let's pretend we're starting today. How would we build it? Getting rid of all the legacy and all the baggage. And so they whiteboard, what a company would look like if you were starting it today with all the known knowns. If you were to start a political system today, you would realize, you would start by doing polling of the attitudinal and ideological views of the American public. What you find out, when you take off those jerseys and just do it, from square one, what you find out is there's a majority of the public, depends on how you do it, between 51 and 58, 59%, who don't fit into either party. Now, most of those people will vote consistently. If they do vote, they'll vote consistently one party. And so the Democrats and Republicans think they got them locked up and think they're doing everything that they need to do. But the fact is they're not happy with the party they're in, and you guys are probably two of them. There's a majority of this country right now that – right. And you know why? It's because we have a monopoly, because it's the one industry in this country, in this world – in our times that has not been cannibalized yet, that has not been disrupted. And while you talk about the millennials, I'm on the board at the Harvard IOP, that they do some great polling. Here's a generation that grew up with, 5,000 songs on their hip. I don't know about you guys, but when I wanted that one Bob Seger song, I had to buy the whole album. They buy the one song and they got 3,000 others. Why do you think they're going to put up with two parties that neither one of which they really like? They're change junkies. They're choice junkies. So I really think that what the frustration you felt coming out of CPAC, you're certainly not alone in the Republican Party, and I don't know where that's going to lead in 2016. But there's plenty of people in the other party, on the far left, in the middle, in the left of the middle, to the, you could use 18 different descriptors, who are also not happy with the party.
Well, when you start speaking about those constituencies, one of the articles you wrote was very interesting to me because my degree is actually in industrial and labor relations. It talked about kind of what Barack Obama is leaving Hillary in terms of the labor movement because, some of the things with the trade agreement and some things with Obamacare are really kind of getting under that traditional constituency skin as far as the public unions go. How do you see maybe some of those, not just labor, but some of the bigger constituencies that have typically voted Democratic, how do you see some of those shifting and changing? Because the fractures on the right have been evident for years.
Well, the unions are, let's talk about those for a second because they fascinate me. Like I said, I was born and raised in Detroit. My dad was a big union guy. At the Detroit Police Department, my grandfathers helped bring the unions into Chrysler. I was in the union at the Associated Press. I know in my bones that we would not have had the great American century without unions. I also know that unions stopped being an effective and embedded part of my family's life and a relevant part of my family's life in the 60s. And I know my family's pretty typical in that respect. That unions now, they're heavily transactional. They'll take your money and spend it on the politics that they want to. They don't give you, they're not as much of a part of our lives and as relevant to us as they were, for example, my grandfather who hung out at the Union Hall and cashed his check there. And, that's where he learned how to vote and how to be a Democrat and how to get a house. And the union's not that relevant anymore. So the union movement, I still think we need a check against business because, again, I'm not big on monopolies. I don't want folks whose only concern in life is making as much money as they can, determining how much money I can make. So I want a check. I want a fair balance. But like most Americans, I don't see the union movement today as being that. It's still stuck in the 1960s. It hasn't evolved. It hasn't been disrupted. It hasn't cannibalized themselves. So you're left with what they have is a lot of money because of the way they get it from their quote-unquote members, even if many of the members don't want the money spent that way. And they're having less and less influence on the political culture and even less and less influence on the Democratic Party. If Hillary Clinton might flip-flop and say that she's against the trade agreement, thinking she needs to do it to keep the unions aligned, I would tell her, don't be a fool. Instead of listening to your consultants tell you what they think you need to do, why don't you tell them, Madam Secretary, what you think is right for the country and make them sell it? She's always been for free trade. She called this free trade agreement a gold standard. The fact that she might flip-flop for the sake of a dying union movement, I think would be foolish, and it would look inauthentic, and that's the last thing she can look like right now.
But I don't think the move would personally. I don't think the move would be to save a dying union movement. I think the move would be to get that last bit of presidential money from a dying move.
You're exactly right. I misspoke. And that's even more cynical, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I
JD's just jaded.
Well, let me tell you something.
No, he's right. He's exactly right.
Because that segues into the other thing. I mean, one of the things you don't know about me, I mean, my background is Wall Street and finance, and that's where the world that I come from.
That's why I don't like you.
No, but hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
There is nobody who was more opposed to most of the bailouts that went on the financial side of the industry than I was myself. There is nobody more opposed to corporate welfare than I am myself. And I'm glad that you and the reason that I brought up my background is because you and Stacey were speaking about the union movement. And now I wanted to take it to the other side of the spectrum and get your opinion. I was speaking with a friend of mine about the bailout the other day, and to my mind, the 535 members of Congress, plus most presidential administrations, do not really understand the mechanics of how the global or the American economy actually works. So I think that the institutions that got the bailout basically lock Washington in a room and say, hey, if you don't do this, the world's going to blow up tomorrow. And everybody says, oh, they'll blame us. Here you go. That being said, when you speak about Wall Street and people going to make all the money that they can, what we can't find is a happy medium. Because one of the things as a guy who comes from the corporate financial side, Ron, that I find detestable is I have not in my entire career, almost 20 years in finance, seen at any time in any administration an SEC with any teeth or even people with the ability to be even a half a step behind of a lot of the fraud and the manipulation on Wall Street. And I think that within politics, until we get to a point where, I don't know, take somebody completely outside the box, a Trey Gowdy or whomever you want, I think that when you go all the way up the other side of this, the scale to the 1%, it's almost a more Wild West, and we almost don't have the capability within our institutions, in my mind, right now, to lasso that.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it may be that we don't have the capability, but I don't believe that. I'm more optimistic. We can get stuff done. We want to get stuff done. Our political leadership hasn't had the will, I think, largely because they've been bought off, to have regulators that protect us against the kind of shenanigans that almost drove this economy in a ditch. I think I think the reason why the regulators don't regulate is because our leaders don't want them to.
Well, and again, when we talked to Jay, he had an interesting point that I'd like to get your perspective on. He said that basically K Street and lobbyists have a monopoly on the information gathering and providing to Congress because Congress doesn't have the resources to legislate effectively through research and understanding of so many different issues.
Yeah, but why is that?
Because they're not appropriating their own money to that end. They're appropriating it.
Right. I was going to say, yeah, they control the purse strings. Why is it they're spending 70% of their time raising money? They could change the structural problems in our politics that forces them to do that. Why don't they have more researchers? If that's really the only problem, they can hire more researchers. And look at some of the solutions that they're cynically putting forward. Oh, I'll do term limits if you put me in office. We'll do term limits. Well, if you do, I've seen term limits, how they work in a state like Arkansas that used to have a functioning legislature. Used to have people who were held accountable by the voters every 2 years, who really understood the budget and really understood the bureaucracy. Then we start term limiting them out, and every year you get a fresh group of rookies. And the people who are now running the Arkansas government aren't the legislators; it's the lobbyists and the bureaucrats. So we're getting the government that we deserve, and unless we, the people, to borrow a phrase, demand better, and stop shrugging our shoulders and start shaking our fists, unless we really have a groundswell political revolution like we had at the beginning of the last century, it's just going to get worse, and eventually it'll implode.
So basically stop being the old man yelling at the cloud and actually do something.
Yeah, we have to have more than 45% of us voting. We've got to stop assuming that we have to pick between these two parties. We have to realize that we have more power than anybody, any generation has ever had on Earth to be able to find a solution to a problem, bring it to scale, find other people who mobilize other people behind that solution, and make stuff happen. We're not impudent. We're not helpless and hopeless unless we decide to be.
That's true, and voters have to realize that too, though, because until, and if you take a look at even bringing it back to how we started with Baltimore, until the politicians in cities that have severe socioeconomic problems, until those politicians honestly fear for their jobs and don't have to take as written in stone that 80 or 90% of the community is going to vote for them on name recognition, then until that happens, half of it's on the voters too. They have to hold people accountable.
Exactly, and it's why I get so high up on my horse when you have someone like Scott Walker claiming the president doesn't love his country, or Hillary Clinton, and I'm not equating these two issues, just the two I've been most recently involved in. And Hillary Clinton, fudging the foreign money and deleting her emails. I get so upset when the folks who support them defend that. and excuse it. Because what you're doing is you're setting a precedent that, okay, it's okay to take all of your government email and put it on a private server and then delete it. Or, oh, it's okay to say that a man who you might disagree with but who's the leader of your country doesn't love his country. We all have to have a one set of facts and one set of rules by which we insist that all of our leaders play by. There was a time not that long ago that if a politician did what the Clintons have done, we all would be upset and demanding accountability and forcing them to turn over their emails and hand back the foreign donations. It wouldn't just be half of us. And there was a time when a politician, a Republican, claimed that the Democratic president didn't love his country, we all would have said, hey, that's unacceptable. Don't do it again or you're going to pay a price. But now we only do it when the other side does it. And that, I think, is really, really dangerous. If you only can do wrongdoing, when only one team can do wrong. It's like having referees on the field who only throw the flags on one field.
Well,
on one team.
It's interesting to me, though, Ron, because when you talk about jersey wearing, let's say, I think we're wearing a lot more jerseys in this country than just red and blue. I mean, the balkanization that I feel as an individual, to the point where I can't simultaneously say what happened in Baltimore with Freddie Gray may be wrong, but I also believe rioting is wrong. It's one or the other. I mean, I get abused daily on social media.
And we can't be like we can't. We got to stop looking at things so binary, and that there's only one side you can be on. And heck, I get beat up when I make comparisons. It's like analogies now have been taken off the table. We have to grow up. We have this. The problem is we have these new media that is throwing us all together. Now we can all hear each other. It used to be that me and 12 other people were the only ones who were heard about what happened in Washington. And that was a great time to be a reporter when, there was gatekeepers. Now we all have to, I got to listen to folks like you. I think it's wonderful. I'm embracing it. It's democratizing in the small d. But we haven't learned how to behave now that we all have to listen to each other. We're like a bunch of kindergartners who've been turned loose on the playground for the first day.
I am now
and we're acting like Lord of the Flies. Hopefully, we'll find a new normal and new rules on this playground, and things will level off at some point. But right now we're at the infancy of this new era, and it's pretty scary.
I
may never tweet Ron Fournier again.
I don't think I'll ever tweet again.
I think that is a great place for us to start wrapping up. Ron, I can't, and ladies and gentlemen, like we said, put him in your daily read rotation. Is Ron Fournier of the National Journal and, of course, the Fox News panel. Couple of quick things before we go, Ron. You actually have you rail against political dynasties, but the Fourniers seem to be creating a journalistic dynasty. Would you like to plug somebody writing for all the dark things that go on in Detroit? Don't you have somebody in the family writing some pretty stories?
There is a glimmer of light. A young lady who was born in Arkansas and raised in suburban Washington, who, when she got out of school with an anthropology degree of all darn things, went into City Year, a wonderful AmeriCorps program, a volunteer program. Yeah, she got a stipend, but it made it so she could go to Detroit and save some money for an advanced degree. And she fell in love with Detroit, fell in love with a bartender up there, got married, got a job at the Detroit News, and now my daughter is a breaking news reporter in the city of Detroit at the Detroit News.
And where can people find her on Twitter? Because I actually do enjoy her feed. I just don't have it written.
Her name is Holly Fournier. I think it's H Fournier, handle H Fournier. But if you search Holly Fournier, she's the beautiful young blonde working at the Detroit News.
Look up that Holly Fournier. I know she's writing some great stuff. Get over and read Ron. And the last quick question we have for you. Would you even consider, because I know that this is a big ask. This is a huge ask. No, I'm going to go
absolutely
out of
my way.
not. I'll have Stacey ask it because she's a lot more beautiful and nice than I am. Any chance that you would consider contemplating maybe at some point, being that Charles does Wine, Women, and Song, putting $1 or $5 on JD and Stacey at war, just because we're trying to get it done and make it, Ron, in the Canada casino?
I've never been on the show for that. I'm not a regular contributor. They just invite me on when they can't get somebody smart.
Okay.
And I do the other cable channels too. Yeah, I know. I earn every penny I get from MSNBC, Fox, and CNN. I get nothing. So I've never been on for the Canada Casino, but if I ever am, I'll see if I can slip a couple dollars your way.
Oh my God,
right,
ladies
perfect.
and gentlemen,
All
I
right,
love him
that's
very
a
much.
huge
And
I'm not even sure how that works. I don't know what I just committed to, but
I
I'll have to figure it out.
Me neither. It's okay. Just go with it. Everybody, put Ron Fournier into your rotation. And remember, go find him at Ron Fournier on Twitter. And when you disagree with him, do it, but don't be disagreeable. And the man will happy to back up his point. Ron, thank you so much for your time. And I really hope you consider coming back again at some time.
I'd love to. And thank you guys for being so great on Twitter and pushing back on me and just being good Twitter friends. You take care.
Thanks, Ron. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Thank you for celebrating your kids with us.
Stacey, I mean, look, it's one of those things where for the audience, if those of you who plan your bathroom breaks for your coffee with the Baileys and the Jameson with it, we're not taking any breaks today. I hope you enjoyed the interview. I mean, what was your take from that?
Well, first of all, he's just one of the most gracious people I interact with on
Completely.
social media. We have disagreed vehemently, but we are never disagreeable. Always willing to respond, always willing to engage. I thought he brought up some great points, during the interview about, the democratization with a small d. I think that's huge. And I think a lot of us still are learning how to deal with that level of voice, and we probably do need to get better at it.
And like I said, make sure he's over at the National Journal. You can find him sometimes on the Fox News panel at 6 o'clock, special report with Brett Baer. Now, I can't believe the hour is just about gone. But this is how seriously Stacey and I take the show. I have brought Lionel Richie and the grand piano with me, but I have him locked up in the bathroom. We'll get to him in a second. Folks, thank you so much for joining us live today. We want to thank our special guest, Mr. Ron Fournier. Remember, catch us Tuesday nights for Game On. We're going to have Dan Gaynor from the Media Research Center. Next Mother's Day, John LaRosa from Four-Tier Strategies, a little political consulting. And I think that we better go because they're going to start knocking on the door and ask us to get the hell out of here and check out of this hotel. Am I right or am I wrong?
You are absolutely right. By the time we're up on out of here, the maids are going to be at the door. So,
all right, folks, it's going to be a very late post to SoundCloud today. The replay probably won't go up till about 7 or 8 o'clock. But Stacey, tell the folks what you're doing.
I'm headed home from D.C. Hopefully we'll get some things posted and written up on WayneDupree.com this week, and you can always find me at Scott's Fire.
And you can find me at GameOnJD on the Twitters. Find me on that Facebook, too. And as always, I'm in places that I shouldn't be. But we got such good things going on here that I'm going to be doing all my work to see you guys again, not just next Sunday, but Tuesday night. Have that easy Sunday morning, baby. If it's Sunday, it's Bloody Marys and broadsheets.
We're your cure from your weekly news hangover.
Thank you for taking it easy with us. You can find our show account on Twitter at JD and Stacey, or send us your interesting news story of the week to Game On War, that's WAAR, @gmail.com.
And you can find me on Twitter at Scott's Fire and on Facebook at Stacey Lennox.
And you can find me on the Twitters at GameOnJD, and please visit us at